The Battle of Midway began on the morning of June 4, 1942, after weeks of preparation, intelligence analysis, and coordinated fleet movement across the Central Pacific. The Imperial Japanese Navy, under the overall command of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, initiated their advance toward the Midway Atoll with a task force composed of 4 of their primary fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, supported by battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarine screens, and auxiliary elements. Their objective was to eliminate the remaining operational American carriers and secure Midway as a forward operating base from which they could pressure Hawaii and neutralize U.S. resistance in the Pacific. Unbeknownst to the Japanese command, American intelligence units located at Station HYPO had already broken critical portions of the Japanese naval code, verifying that the operations target, referred to as AF, was Midway. Through deliberate deception and controlled radio broadcasts, American analysts confirmed the Japanese intentions and relayed the information to Admiral Chester Nimitz. As a result, U.S. forces were not caught by surprise. Instead, they were positioned deliberately and quietly to intercept the Japanese fleet. On June 2 and 3, American reconnaissance aircraft from Midway began reporting scattered contacts, including enemy submarines and elements of the approaching invasion force. Meanwhile, the U.S. carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown maneuvered into a concealed ambush position northeast of the atoll. Carrier air groups prepared for immediate response, with pilots briefed in detail on likely enemy movements and expected strike vectors based on intelligence projections. At approximately 4:30 a.m. on June 4, Japanese carrier aircraft launched the first wave toward Midway Island. The strike consisted of over 100 aircraft, including bombers and escorts. Around 6:20 a.m., they reached the atoll, initiating a coordinated bombing run that resulted in extensive damage to fuel storage, hangars, and defensive installations. Midway's anti-aircraft positions responded with concentrated fire, shooting down several attackers. Despite the heavy bombardment, Midway's operational capability remained intact. During the attack, the American garrison launched multiple groups of aircraft, including B-26, B-17s, PBYs, and torpedo-equipped TBF Avengers. These units engaged the Japanese carrier group but were met with strong resistance. Many aircraft failed to return, and the strikes resulted in minimal damage to the Japanese fleet. Nevertheless, these early attacks disrupted the Japanese carriers' deck operations, forcing them to adjust formation and defensive posture repeatedly. Between 7 o'clock and 8 a.m., additional American attacks were launched from Midway, including Marine Corps dive bombers and Army Air Forces bombers attempting high-altitude bombing runs. These efforts, while largely unsuccessful, contributed further to the cumulative pressure on the Japanese carriers, complicating their rearmament cycles and delaying their planned second strike on the atoll. Shortly afterward, U.S. carrier-based torpedo squadrons, a VT-8 from Hornet, VT-6 from Enterprise, and VT-3 from Yorktown, began locating and approaching the Japanese fleet. The first to attack was Torpedo Squadron 8 under the command of Lieutenant Commander John Waldron. At approximately 9:20 a.m., VT-8 commenced a low-level torpedo attack that drew nearly all available Japanese fighter cover to sea level. Within minutes, the squadron suffered catastrophic losses, with only one survivor. Despite inflicting no direct damage, their engagement forced the Japanese carriers to maneuver radically, preventing launch or recovery operations. Moments later, Torpedo Squadron 6 initiated its own attack under equally adverse conditions. They, too, were intercepted by Japanese Zero fighters and anti-aircraft fire, losing most of their aircraft. VT-3 arrived soon afterward, facing similar results. These attacks produced no confirmed hits but achieved a decisive strategic effect. They pulled Japanese fighter cover to low altitude and left the carrier decks exposed at the worst possible moment. At approximately 10:22 a.m., dive bomber squadrons from Enterprise and Yorktown, VBE-6, VS-6, and VBE-3, located the Japanese carrier group. Approaching from high altitude and effectively undetected, they executed a coordinated dive bombing attack. Within minutes, direct hits were recorded on Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu. Each carrier was struck multiple times, igniting aircraft laden with fuel and ordnance on their hangar decks. The resulting fires spread rapidly, overwhelming firefighting crews. By 10:30 a.m., 3 of Japan's four carriers were heavily damaged and effectively out of action. During this phase, the Japanese carrier Hiryu remained operational. Under the determined leadership of Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, Hiryu launched 2 counterstrikes against the American carriers. Around 11 a.m., the first wave located Yorktown, striking her with bombs that caused severe damage and temporarily halted flight operations. Emergency teams restored limited functionality, allowing Yorktown to recover aircraft before a second wave attacked around 1:30 p.m., scoring additional hits and forcing the crew to abandon ship. The vessel, however, refused to sink and remained afloat until later torpedo attacks from a Japanese submarine several days afterward. In the late afternoon, American reconnaissance successfully located Hiryu. Dive bombers from Enterprise and Hornet conducted a final attack around 5 p.m., scoring multiple hits that ignited catastrophic fires across the ship's decks. By evening, Hiryu was immobilized. After evacuation of survivors, the carrier sank early the next morning. By the evening of June 4, the remaining Japanese surface units began withdrawal. Over the next several days, scattered engagements, submarine attacks, and recovery operations continued. The loss of Akagi, Kaga, Sarayu, and Hiryu represented a strategic blow from which the Imperial Japanese Navy never recovered. More than 200 experienced pilots and crew were lost, and the core of Japan's carrier strike capability was effectively destroyed. U.S. losses included the carrier Yorktown and the destroyer Hamman, along with numerous aircraft and aircrew. Nonetheless, the outcome of the Battle of Midway marked a decisive shift in the Pacific theater. For the first time since the beginning of the war, Japanese expansion was halted, and the strategic initiative passed definitively to the United States. The events of June 4 demonstrated the critical importance of intelligence, timing, and determination under extreme conditions. The battle fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Pacific, shaping the course of the conflict in the years that followed.